I am Stephen Rabinowitz, and this is the conference finals edition of On the Sports Lines. Jay?
I'm Jay Kaplan, and not to start the show on a downer, but I do want to extend my condolences to the friends and family and how the entire Colts fan base on the loss of owner Jim Irsay this week. Um, we here on the show have had our issues with decisions he's made and things that he's said, but there was never any doubt that Irsay loved the Colts franchise, meant everything to him, and he understood that he was a steward of a public trust when it comes to being the owner of a professional sports team. So, condolences to y'all out in Indianapolis. He was a character, and he's going to be missed. And I wanted to wish you happy birthday live on the air and let you know that I'm wearing this t-shirt because I know that you and all Knicks fans are feeling this way right now. I figured Oliver Queen's tagline as the Green Arrow would perfectly fit the mood that is permeating the five boroughs after what happened at Madison Square Garden last night.
Yeah, I'm Anthony Strait. Thank you for the birthday wishes. You know what? The weather wasn't the only Debbie Downer today. It felt doom and gloom. Now keep in mind it's the first game of the series, but it gave a lot of Knicks fans some bad memories considering who the opponent was, who was in the building calling that game for TNT. Yeah, my 42nd birthday is the second off to the greatest of starts if I'm a Knicks fan. It's be interesting to see how they bounce back. Because already already everybody that was celebrating on the Knicks bandwagon and jumped off it after one game. Let's say, you know what, good, we don't need you. If you come back, don't come back on the bandwagon.
I like my intros better. Anyway, Anthony, by the way, Anthony's cat also turns 8. Let's give a shout out to the true boss of the Strait household.
Yes.
And also Al Horford in a week turns 38. And unlike most of these other years, he can actually celebrate his birthday this year. Congratulations, Al, and all of Boston. Again, this is the On the Sports Lines Conference Finals edition. Wish Anthony a happy birthday at facebook.com/on the sports lines, or subscribe or leave a comment on the happiest place on earth, YouTube, at youtube.com/on the sports lines. We have made it to the Final Four, but there is no craziest tournament ever or popular brackets here. It's just men fighting men for the Larry O'Brien Trophy and the Stanley Cup. I'm sorry, Lord Stanley's Chalice. Check it off. We'll talk the NHL's Frozen Four, and also, in an unrelated segment that I don't have a prompt for, the lifting of Pete Rose's lifetime ban in baseball. But first, go New York, go New York, go. Let's go to the hardwood and talk about basketball. When we talked about the big 3 teams in the NBA midseason show, you should have known we were going to do some jinxing, and we're glad we did. Instead of the top 2 teams in the East during the regular season in Boston and Cleveland meeting in the Eastern Conference Finals, it's the next 2 teams in the East who upset those 2 teams respectively, the New York Knicks and Indiana Pacers, to have their 2024 conference semifinals rematch 1 round later in the conference finals. And yes, Jalen Brunson and Tyrese Halliburton did have a square off on at WWE SmackDown last year. If you don't know it by now, go read the internet. As you may know now, after a 14-point lead for the Knicks evaporating in about 3 minutes last night, not even that, the Pacers won game 1 in overtime, 138-135. So before we talk about the team looking for their first finals in the quarter century, and that's the Pacers, let's talk about the one who's looking for their first finals in a quarter century +1. That's the Knicks. Anthony, what's the positive over the last series versus the Celtics? And game 1 last night, you did some edits before this actually came on, unfortunately. That needs to continue as the conference finals roll on.
Yeah, I had to do a number of edits to my points to
Yeah.
account for what happened 24 hours ago. Ironically enough, the Knicks defense was something that we saw in Game 6 was something I felt like they needed to carry over, especially against the Indiana Pacers team that plays up tempo and can score in bunches, as we all have seen in the previous 2 rounds against the Bucks and the Cavaliers, respectively. Now, games 3 to 5 against Boston was the worst 3-game stretch of the season defensively, allowing 129 points per game per 100 possessions. Game 6 was a complete 180. They allowed just 51 points on 60 possessions. That would have been a fourth worst offensive game for any team in the regular season against the Knicks defensively. And granted, the Celtics without Tatum, Kristaps Porzingis has been a shell of himself, but as he showed in Game 5, that they're just as much as a potent offense and the ball movement just as crisp against a team that has Knicks defense that has been up and down all season long. In Game 6, you saw guys chasing shooters off the perimeter, off the 3-ball, and they limit the ball after the Celtics scored 80 points on 52 possessions through games 3 to 5. They limit them to 16 or 25 transition positions in Game 6. Now, going into the conference finals, they're going up against a Pacers team that scored in their wins against Cleveland 114, 129. 104 was the only loss in the series, by the way. 120 and 121 points. And in round 1, they scored 119 against the Bucks, 119, 129, 101, 123, and 117. Long story short, this Pacers team loves to run and gun. They turn everything to a track meet. One of the differences, though, from last year's semifinal loss was the fact that Mitchell Robinson is healthy in this series in a big part to the Knicks defense, especially being a rim protector. When he's been in the lineup, the Knicks are a much better defensively. Robinson's ability to switch on smaller players, be able to guard the perimeter on pick and rolls, has been an added bonus to the Knicks, and obviously something that was not that he didn't have in the first half of the season when he missed the first 58 games of the season. Now, fast forward to 24 hours ago, for 46 minutes, the New York Knicks probably played the best overall basketball game of the entire postseason. The offense was clicking. The defense in the second and the fourth quarters alone had held the Pacers to under 40% shooting for the most part. In fact, the fourth quarter, when Jalen Brunson went to the bench with his 5th foul, they went on a 14-0 run, and in that same span, the Pacers missed 12 of the first 14 shots of the quarter. However, I think we all know what happened in the final 3.5 minutes. Aaron Naismith became Game 6 Klay Thompson, virtually within moments. And it was the fact that he was knocking down threes. He hit 6 in a row. It was the fact that 3 of those were very much uncontested. And the one where he was contested, there was some defense on him. There was too much room on a pick and roll. For whatever reason, Carl-Anthony Towns continues to play drop coverage and allow extra space for shooters. But on one of them, the one that cut the lead down to 2, it was Josh Hart that was the culprit when he slipped trying to fire off of a screen. Now, fast forward to the overtime. There was a couple of defensive lapses. Josh Hart fell asleep ball watching. His man Nimhard gets the open layup. There was also the brain fog as far as not firing Obi Toppin that allowed him to get a dunk and extend the game to 3. Basically, last night was epitome of the Knicks defense all season long. They played well. They had Tyrese Halliburton, who had a big, honestly, the fourth quarter shot, made some key plays in overtime. But for the very first 3 quarters, were very much held in check. And then everything kind of fell apart. What the Knicks need to do is, if they're going to win this series, or at least get back in this series, tie this series up, they have to do it on the defensive
I will
end.
say that. I will say this though, and kind of this is not necessarily as much of a positive as anything in there. The way that the Knicks have played, Anthony, over the last few weeks going into that game, it did seem like what they did against Boston didn't really travel from one game or the next. But you do have to think that there should be some adjustments made going into this game too. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, yeah, absolutely. The one thing about the Pacers, the fact that they are very they up tempo, but they don't shoot the high volume of threes as the Celtics did in the previous series. So you would think that would help the Knicks quite often as far as defending the three ball. However, they're going to have to make some adjustments with these pick and rolls and communicate on switches because we're seeing far too often whether it's Brunson, whether it's Towns, whether it's even Mikal Bridges. There's some miscommunication going on, and guys are not rotating out to shooters fast enough, or they're not picking up on the screens. So that's something that they definitely have to clean up. You think about this: for 45 minutes, the Knicks defense is actually really good after the Pacers had hit 9 of the first 10 shots to open the game up, and it just kind of fell apart. But it is something that the Knicks can obviously clean up. They're going to have to. But more importantly, this is the thing is they're going to have to defend the three ball, and they got to do a better job of defending these pick and rolls because obviously when Tyrese Halliburton is at his best, it's not necessarily when he's scoring as much as he is a contributor. And when he's passing the ball, and when he's able to,
we're going to talk about Tyrese Halliburton in just a second. Let's get over to Jay's side of the ball. Jay, some negatives in this game. They actually became more positive, so it's kind of the reverse with what your side of the angle is. But give me a negative going in. Give me an update on that negative as this series rolls on with Game 2 tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, the negative is the inconsistency on both sides of the ball. The inability to play a full 48, and it's the microcosm of that inconsistency is Karl-Anthony Towns. Think about this. Here are his numbers in the first series against Detroit. 19.7 points per game, 10 boards, 1.7 assists, 1.3 turnovers. That's just 7.5 turnover ratio. He shot 48.9% from the floor, 48% from three. He was 12 for 25, 90% from the line. Against Boston, 19.8 points per game, 12.7 rebounds. Better, improved double-double, right? Half an assist a game, 2.7 turnovers per game. That's 13.1 rate. His field goal percentage overall dropped to 47.3. He hit only less than 16% from three, though again, above 90% from the line. And look, to say that the Knicks were a model of inconsistency despite the second round series win over the Celtics would be an understatement. The size of their starting center. And he's, as I said at the top, he's a microcosm of that overall team inconsistency. On the plus side, Towns has been a double-double machine of late this postseason. 7 in his last 8, 5 of the 6 games against Boston. On the flip side, he's been a foul magnet. 4.4 per game in these playoffs as opponents increasingly look to hunt him. He's fouled out once against Detroit, and he's picked up 4 or more in 11 of the 12 games the Knicks have played in the postseason. And he's more than doubled his turnover rate and almost doubled his turnover percentage from the Detroit series to the Boston series. Add to this his inability to knock down threes against the Celtics, are basically taking until Game 6 to punish the smaller defenders Boston used on him in the paint, along with the plethora of times he was not reading the same defensive playbook, let alone being on the same page as his teammates, such as being, as Anthony said, in drop coverage on pick and rolls when he should have been switching or hedging, or simply being so out of position that his teammates literally had to point to him where to go or move him where he was supposed to be. Again, basically until Game 6. And you realize that the Knicks were somewhat lucky to get past the defending champs in the second round. Now, for a guy whose numbers make the case that he's the best three-point shooting 7-footer in NBA history, he's 40% from beyond the arc for his career on a little over 4 per game, and whose ability to spread the floor for Jalen Brunson and the other perimeter players make bigs defending him pay if they're late contesting his shots. That's a key element of the Knicks offense. The series he had against the Celtics is concerning as he shot, as I said, just 3 for 19 beyond the arc and just 1 for 6 in the Game 6 series clincher. He did offset that by going 7 and 11 in the paint and at the rim, finally taking those smaller guys inside, but he needs to be more consistent with his offensive play from possession to possession, let alone game to game. Defensively, he needs to be the player we saw in Game 6, switching out on the perimeter players and guarding them. He, like the rest of the Knicks, cannot afford to be out of sync, especially against a Pacers team that loves to play at a high pace. Number 3 in the NBA in the postseason at 99 possessions per 48 minutes. And they push the ball in transition as often as possible. And then in a half court, they'll pick and roll you to death. Two areas where the Knicks struggled for the most part against Boston. The Knicks allowed Boston to score 80 points on 52 transition possessions. That's 1.5 points per in games 3 through 5, before holding them to just 16 points on 25 transition possessions. That's 0.64 points per possession in game 6 per Synergy stats. Indiana was number 5 in the NBA in points per possession in transition during the regular season, 1.17, and they're number 1 in the playoffs, 1.28. In the pick and roll in the playoffs, Indiana ball handlers are averaging a tick under 1 point per possession, tied for number 3 with Boston, and their rollers are averaging 1.09 points per possession. And when running any kind of screening actions, Pacers are averaging 1.44 points per possession, number 3 in the NBA so far in the postseason. Tyrese Halliburton and Miles Turner are a scary pick and roll duo, and they're going to play on Cat's inconsistent defense, and you saw it at times in game 1. As I noted earlier, Cat tends to lag back, aka drop coverage, while guarding screeners on pick and rolls. Turner has hit his 5.53 attempts per game at a 39.5 clip during the regular season, and he's knocking down 4 threes per game at 45% so far this postseason. If Towns gives him too much space and is late with contesting, Turner's going to make him pay for it from 3, and did. Turner has been the Pacers' best rollman in the playoffs, 1.21 points per possession, and their second best spot-up shooter, 1.50 points per possession. The Knicks are allowing 1.05 points per possession allowed per spot-ups. That's 11 out of the 16 playoff teams, and 1.32 points per game allowed to the roller in pick and rolls in the postseason. That is last among the 16 teams. Look, getting back to Cat. In his career, he's posted excellent numbers against the Pacers. 18 games. In averaging 34.3 minutes per game, he averages 27.8 points per game on 56.1% from the floor, 40% from the 3 on over 4 attempts per game, 87.5% from the line on over 7 attempts per game. He has an overall true shooting percentage of 66.7%. His 30.4 usage rate is tied for the highest against any opponent. And his offensive rating against the Pacers in his career of 125 is his highest against any opponent he's played at least a dozen games against. He's also posted 11.1 boards and 2.7 assists. Now, look, chances are the Pacers will guard him more often with a big, as you saw in game 1, Miles Turner, Obi Toppin, which could get him better looks from 3, though maybe not as many in the post. So what we have to see is how that impacts what the Knicks want to do on offense, especially what adjustments they make going into game 2. One thing to watch for is whether the Knicks can put Towns in position to put up more threes in half-court possessions. Some of that last night. It's an area where they've struggled in the playoffs. A lot of Cats' threes so far in the postseason have come in transition, but against a Pacers team that is number 1 in transition defense in the playoffs, allowing 0.96 points per possession, the Knicks may not get as many of those above-the-break threes in transition for Cat as they'd like. Bottom line, the Knicks as a whole need to play the full 48, as Anthony said, in every game if they want to have a shot at the team's first Larry O'Brien trophy since '73. They have to communicate on defense every possession. They need to defend at the level we saw in Game 6 against Boston in every game. And Karl-Anthony Towns in particular needs to be 100% focused and engaged on both sides of the ball for the entire time he is on the floor. If he's not, the Pacers are going to send the Knicks home for the second straight postseason. So after that, all that. What happened in the Game 1 loss? Look, Towns had a great game offensively if you look at the numbers. In 39 minutes, 35 points on 11 of 17 from the floor, 4 of 8 from 3, 9 of 11 from the line. With the dozen rebounds, he was +9 for the game. But once again, the inability to play the full 48 reared its ugly head for both Towns and the Knicks. First 46 minutes, like Anthony said, Towns and the Knicks looked like the team we saw in Game 6 against Boston, knocking down any and every shot and aggressively defending every possession. But in those final 2 minutes, Towns and the Knicks looked like the team we saw in Games 3 through 5 against Boston. Couldn't hit the shot. Towns missed a 3 and a free throw in the last 2 minutes, or get the stop that would have cemented the win, as defensive mistakes, as Anthony said, allowed Indiana to shoot 6 for 6 in that 2-minute stretch, including 5 threes. Here's hoping they have better luck on both sides of the ball as a team, and in Karl Anthony Towns in particular in game 2.
Defensively, it seems like he can't put together a consistent game in most of this postseason, but this 31.6 game score last night, which is his highest game score, ironically enough, since 3 months ago, when he had a 37.6 also against Indiana. So, time for your Halliburton Standard Oil update. You know what happened last night with Tyrese Halliburton taking the shot.
No choke sign, okay?
Let's talk about that for a second. Hit the shot last night at the buzzer to send the game into overtime, and in a move reminiscent of 4 years ago, it could have been the Kevin Durant game because Tyrese had a shoe that was one size too big. And he actually hit the choke sign thinking he had won the game. And he said, as is in the post-game interview, would never have done that if I knew it was a 2. But it was a 2, but it ended up with the win. Scored 31 points on 11 assists last night. And he's had game winners in this whole entire playoffs. At Milwaukee home with a game winner in the first round. Game 2, he helped complete a stirring comeback and hit the big shot to win the game. And then this one, which has bounces that remind Jay Kaplan of Kawhi Leonard circa 2019 against the Philadelphia 76ers. Ooh. The last shot you could think of that did something like that. This is an Indiana team that will not go away. And Halliburton, if you saw last year, when Halliburton didn't score, the Indiana Pacers lost. When Halliburton was dominating, the Indiana Pacers won, plain and simple. If you look at the numbers, by the way, from the postseasons, he's had 15 games so far this postseason. Last postseason, 11 games this postseason. The numbers are pretty much exactly the same. Minutes, 34.8 to 34.9. Field goals, pretty much it's the exact same thing. 7.0 of 14.3 average last year, 6.8 of 14.2 this year. 48% field goal percentage both years. 48.8 last year, 48.1 this year. Three-pointer percentage is the only thing that's down. That's down about 4% from 2024. But he does get to the line almost 2.5 times as much. He only got to the line about 1.3 times per game last year. This time it's 3.5 games, even though his percentage has dropped a little bit. The biggest thing is also he's been able to do everything. His assists have actually gone up to 9.5 per game. Last year, it was 8.2. Simply put, that's what the Indiana Pacers have on the floor on the other side. Halliburton is a matchup nightmare. I think he outplayed Jalen Brunson myself in game number 1, used his body the right way in a lot of the possessions, and the numbers show for it. He shot 52.2% from the field, 4 of 12 from 3, got to the line 4 times, had double-digit assists with 11, only 2 turnovers, and again, the 31 points. He is going to be a star, and I know he is a star already, but you do realize that this is still the guy who was considered the most overrated player in the league via a player poll not too long ago. He's making everybody eat his words, and he is fun, and he's having a lot of fun doing it. I don't know what's going to happen for the rest of this series, but I think if Halliburton has a bad game, the Indiana Pacers don't win. It's plain and simple. He is the star of that team. Siakam is a good number 2, but Halliburton is by far this team's number 1. And so that's the key to what this Indiana team has to do. If Halliburton can be the best player on the court, which he was last night outside of Aaron Nesmith's open threes that kept hitting and hitting and hitting and hitting, the Indiana Pacers win this series. So let's see what happens going into game number 2. I know game 1 was a gut punch for a lot of Knicks fans, but it is just a game when it comes down to it. And I think a lot of people had this series going long. Nothing changes my mind going into game number 2. Moving on to the West. I know what you're thinking. We just talked about a local team with the Knicks for about 25 minutes. Why are we already doing this? Well, did you like Isaiah Hartenstein's contributions a year ago for the Knicks? He's here for the Thunder. Do you like other Villanova boys who have made contributions like Dante DiVincenzo? He's here too. Did you like Julius Randle? Just enjoy the first 2. Don't worry about it. Save your Randle Digger for later on. Okay, so the Minnesota Timberwolves are here in the conference finals for a second straight year. This year they didn't have to go 7 in the round before with the Nuggets in the semis. They just had a leisure 5-game series win over the short-handed Golden State Warriors. The Oklahoma City Thunder is the other team in there, and they did need 7 games in the first round against the Thunder. Kind of surprising in my book, but what a series it was.
Yeah.
Now it's the Timberwolves and the Thunder to determine the true champions of the West. Sorry, Michigan. A monster 70-44 second half gave OKC a 114-88 win over the Wolves in game number 1. And a monster 44-point half for OKC has them up 16 about halfway through the fourth quarter in game 2. So home court is being defended. Let's talk about both teams. Anthony, with grizzled vets like Rudy Gobert and Mike Conley, 17th oldest team in the NBA are the Minnesota Timberwolves. You might have a younger player to answer the question, which player needs to step up from their semifinal performance?
Well, I asked this question. Has anyone seen Nas Reed since round 1 of the playoffs?
I've seen the banner. I've seen
Yeah,
the
I've seen
banner
him on a
before I've
milk
actually
carton,
seen
Anthony.
Nas Reed.
I mean, last time I saw him, he scored 21 points, had a huge monster game 1 against the Lakers on that Saturday night game. They pulled the upset and eventually led to the Timberwolves winning that series in 5. And he has been MIA pretty much ever since. I mean, game 1 of this conference finals, he only scored 4 points. 1 of 11 shooting, 0 for 7 from 3, took the ball over 3 times. He was outscored. The Wolves are outscored by 21 when he was on the floor. Now, Nas Reed is a fan favorite. He's a great story. A former 6-man of the year winner. A guy who averaged 22 points a game against Oklahoma City in the regular season, in those regular season matchups, but he has been virtually non-existent after that first game, and especially in round 2. He averaged 14.5 points a game coming off the bench. By the way, the Timberwolves are much like the Knicks in the fact that they only play maybe 7, 8 guys deep as far as the rotation. His average is down to 11 points in the playoffs. And the thing is, when the Timberwolves are 8-2 in the first 2 rounds, in spite of that he hasn't been contributing much offensively, because he's a very good defender. He's a guy who gives the Timberwolves some kind of size when Rudy Gobert is either forced to set because the opposing team is playing small, or just someone who can kind of spread the floor because of his shooting. But he has 10 points tonight, and that's only the 3rd time in these playoffs he has actually scored in double digits. It's been a huge disappointment as far as Nas Reed offensively. Defensively, he still give you a little bit on that end. He still give you a little bit on the rebound. But it's obvious if you see the score that they need him to score more. They have to get his offensive production come off the bench. So if Minnesota is going to turn this series around, and looks like they're going to be down 2 games tonight, going into game 3 on Saturday, Nas Reed is going to have to be a lot better. I mean, this is a guy who shot 46% from the field, 46% from 3 against the Thunder in the regular season. So he obviously has the potential to at least give Minnesota some kind of scoring punch outside of Anthony Edwards. So if he's going to show back up in the postseason, now would be a good time for the Minnesota Timberwolves, who, if you see these 2 games, Anthony Edwards has had to work for literally every day that he is getting offensively. And outside of Julius Randle's monsters first half, the Thunder has done a good job of shutting him down. So Nas Reed is a guy I'm looking for. I think everyone in Minneapolis is looking for him right now to pick up his game. And if not, this could be either an easy clean sweep or a German sweep by the time we go back on the air.
It's kind of like the first 2 games that they had last year against Dallas. Those were at home, but they really just haven't learned really how to get the ball rolling on these series. And if you give this Oklahoma City team any momentum, gentleman's sweep is probably the best case scenario that you can get out of this team. Again, fully operational Death Star right now. And if they're in any shouting distance between the third quarter, look out. Jay, the Oklahoma City Thunder, not grizzled vets at all. They're the second youngest team in the NBA next to Atlanta, and no one has more than 7 years experience on this team. Who needs to step up here from their performance against Denver?
Oh man, the guy that I'm looking at is Jalen Williams. He's having a much better game tonight, and I'll get into that in a minute. But this is a guy who, in the regular season, made the All-Star team, averaged 21.6 points per game, second behind SGA, 5.3 boards, 5.1 assists. He shot 48.4% from the floor, 36.5 from downtown, tick under 79 from the stripe. Overall in the playoffs, 19.6 points per game, 5.4 boards, 5.7 assists, 44% from the floor, 25.4% from beyond the arc, and 75% at the line. And those numbers are weighed down by what he did, or rather did not do, against Denver. 17.6 points per game, 5.4 boards, 6 assists. So that part of his game stayed consistent, but it's the scoring and the shooting I'm going to focus on here. He shot just 37.5% from the floor, 23.7% from beyond the arc, 81.1% from the line. He looked like anything but the All-Star in that Denver series. He topped 20 points only twice, games 3 and 7, which were also the only games where he hit at least 10 field goals. And he was the epitome of feast or famine with his shooting. That 37.5% field goal percentage splits into 3 games where he shot 55.1% and 4 games where he shot 23.8%. That type of inconsistency is not what you're looking for from your number 2 scorer and the second best player overall on the team, behind Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the recently named regular season MVP. Look, now Williams consistently got to the rim during the regular season and converted at a 72% rate. But against Denver, he only converted 52% of those shots. After knocking down jump shots, that includes threes, at a 42.1% rate, and converting layups at a 55% rate during the regular season, he had only 32.1% of all his jump shots against the Nuggets, which is bad enough. But he also hit just 40.7% of his layups. Those kind of shooting numbers equate to an effective field goal percentage of 41.5 and a true shooting percentage of a tick under 48. Both are huge drop-offs from his regular season rates of 53.7 effective field goal percentage and 57.3 true shooting percentage. And that's unacceptable from a player with a playoffs usage rate of 24.4, second to SGA. Look, Williams did put up 42 assists to only 10 turnovers. It's a better than 4-to-1 ratio against Denver. And his defensive versatility was on display, and it's going to be an asset against Minnesota, whether he's guarding Anthony Edwards or secondary offensive threats like Julius Randle, Jaden McDaniels, or even Rudy Gobert. But OKC needs him to score the basketball consistently, and he very much did not do that against Denver. You can't go MIA for 3 straight games. He shot 10 of 43 from the floor, 23.3% combined across games 4, 5, and 6, culminating in a 3 for 16 shooting performance in the Game 6 loss after going for 33 points in Game 3, basically not reappearing until Game 7. Granted, he came up big in the series clincher, specifically in the second quarter, where he scored 17 of OKC's 29 points on 8 of 11 from the floor in just 10 minutes and 47 seconds. Those more field goals than he managed in each of games 1, 2, 4, and 5. He finished with 24 points on 10 of 17 overall from the floor, 2 of 5 from 3, 2 of 3 from the line, with 5 boards and 7 dimes against just 1 turnover. OKC's going to need more games like that from Jalen Williams if they're to have a chance to play for the Larry O'Brien Trophy. So, all that being said, how did Game 1 shake out for him? Minnesota won going, OKC won going away, 114-88. In 33 minutes, Williams put up 19 points, but he was 7 of 18 from the floor. He was just 5 of 10 from the rim, 2 of 8 everywhere else, including 1 of 2 from 3. He did go 4 for 4 from the line. He had 8 rebounds, 5 assists, again, no turnovers, and 5 steals. That's a solid stat sheet stuffer of a game, but that shooting, those numbers equate to 41.7% effective field goal percentage and 48.1% true shooting percentage. Still leaves something to be desired. How's he doing tonight? I'm going to do this in real time, Rabbi, so bear with me while I do the math. So far tonight, let me get this here. So far, got to refresh the
I got you if you want
there
it.
you go. In 36 minutes, he's got 23 points on 11 of 19 from the floor, 1 of 5 from beyond the arc. He's 0 for 1 from the line. 8 rebounds and 5 assists. How do those numbers work out? Here we go. Give me 1 second here. All right, 11 field goals made, right? 10 of them from just inside 2 on 19 field goal attempts.
Yes. 8 rebounds.
60,
plus
that's
14.
a 60.5 effective field goal percentage. That is excellent. True shooting percentage, he's got 23 points tonight on 19 field goal attempts. Yes, sir. 19 field goal attempts. He has 1 free throw attempt, finally. And that is a 59.2% true shooting percentage. Tell you right now, guys, that's the type of shooting from Jalen Williams that OKC needs over the rest of this series if they're going to make short work of the T-Wolves and advance to the NBA Finals.
If SGA has that second piece, this team is unstoppable. And I'm saying that.
That's the whole point.
Yeah, and it's funny just because, again, he doesn't even have the best plus-minus tonight. Lou Dort has a plus 26. Shea has a plus 23. So MVP is playing like the MVP. So, Anthony, as we talk about X factors for both teams, I want you to take that Naz Reid milk carton, move it down, take a look at the back, and then you're going to see a second milk carton. And on that second milk carton is my X factor for the Timberwolves, Jaden McDaniels. He has been terrible in these last 2 rounds. First round, he was amazing, 17.4 points per game against the Lakers, the 30-point game and a 25-point game in game 1 and game 3 victories. And he shot 84.6% in the opening round of the playoffs. He's gotten has gotten closer to that at some points, but this has just been a very quiet postseason for McDaniels, a guy who is supposed to really be the next option now that Karl-Anthony Towns is in New York for Julius Randle and Anthony Edwards. In the series against Golden State, not great. 13.4 points per game, only a 52.9% shooting percentage. This is a guy who will easily be a 60% field goal shooter because of his size night after night after night. And his defense has been it's a tiring thing when you have to guard the MVP. And in game 1, SGA, the guy who pretty much is his primary defender, the guy who's primarily having defense against, 31 points, 9 assists, and 5 rebounds. And unfortunately, 14 free throw attempts for SGA. There's been a lot of talk, and JM pretty much after game 1 said, yeah, SGA is going to get whistles. I need to not foul. And he's pretty much doing the same thing tonight and having 13 trips to the line. So it's been pretty much a consistent free throw line scenario for SGA. And Jaden McDaniels, if he's not going to do that much on the defensive end, and in game 1, he was not great. 7 points, only 5 field goal attempts, which means he was tired after guarding SGA all night. 60% from the field, but again, 7.6 rebounds. That's not going to cut it. Tonight, a bit better. They've been focusing on him more. 7 of 13, though, from the field for only 19 points and a -2, which isn't too bad considering Anthony Edwards has a -20 and Julius Randle, who's shooting 2 for 11 tonight, is a -15. McDaniels is going to be one of the future pieces of this team. This Minnesota Timberwolves team is going to be back here. They're just, most of their pieces are young enough, not necessarily the Gobert and Conley piece. Those pieces are very old, and they might have to be moved in the near future for this team to do bigger things. But when you have an 8-man rotation, as Anthony just said, and you really are having inconsistency pretty much from everyone on this team. Anthony Edwards is 1 for 9 from 3 tonight as well. You need your second scorer. You need your third scorer. You need a big 3 to go up against a Thunder team that's going 10 deep. And if Jaden McDaniels cannot do that, this series, again, is going to be a gentleman's sweep at best. I saved the better portion for next because I want to talk about Alex Caruso, my X factor for the Thunder. Alex Caruso has championship experience, the only championship experience on this team when he won a title in the bubble, still a title, sorry, in 2020 by being one of the big pieces of the Lakers. And the Thunder knew they needed that experience, which is why they traded him. They got him back from Chicago when they traded Josh Giddey, who was a big piece of this team, a top 10 pick and a guy who has a bright future, but they wanted the championship experience and the steadiness on defense of Caruso instead of getting the inconsistent play and at times defensive lapses of Giddey. And at times, Caruso is not the best offensive player, but in Game 7 against the Denver Nuggets, oh boy, he was guarding Nikola Jokic most of the time, and he was switching, fronting Jokic, separating him from the basket multiple times per possession. There were times when Chet Holmgren was guarding Jokic, and he said, I'm initiating, and Caruso initiated a scram switch to get back on Jokic. This guy is a 6'5" guard who is essentially the definition of a guard dog. Bark, 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 bark. Make sure that Jokic does not get any bit of room. Caruso had a +40 in Game 7. Oof. And this is a shocking stat when you think about it. Nobody in the NBA has ever come off the bench at a Game 7 and had a +40. He only did that, by the way, in 25 minutes of play. Only 3 players have done it all time. So Caruso did some big stats. And also, in his entire postseason run last year, Josh Giddey had a +39. So I would say check plus on that trade going in. He also logged 3 steals of that night, but he was all over, and Denver had 22 turnovers in Game 7. 11 points, 3 assists, and 3 steals were the numbers on the stat sheet. According to Basketball Index, in the regular season, Caruso was in the 95th percentile in defensive position versatility, 72nd in rim deterrence, 93rd percentile in rim points, and 62% in time spent guarding centers. Do you remember the fact that I said he is 6'5"? For God's sakes. Caruso registered 9 points and 3 rebounds in Game 1 across 22 minutes in that 114-88 victory against the Timberwolves. Tonight, about the same numbers. 4 for 7 from the field, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, 9 points. He does have a -5, but for what Caruso did in Game 7 to get this team this far, again, the Thunder go 10 deep. So whatever you get defensively from Caruso is what you're expecting to get. He is the definition of a championship-winning player. And if you get those championship-winning player moments, and if you get the scoring from SGA and whoever ends up being number 2, most likely should be Jalen Williams, if you get the big numbers from Chet Holmgren and Lou Dort on defense in the starting 5, and then you have that pit bull coming off after that, the Thunder, again, they now know what it's like to win big series or be in the mud in a 7-game series. Playing Minnesota might just be child's play when it comes to that. And Alex Caruso is a man amongst little boys. All right, let's move on. We shall move on right now to the ice. And the National Hockey League's conference finalists are pretty familiar. Three of the four were on the ice at this time last year. Let's start with the East, where we have a 2023 rematch of the conference finals between the Carolina Hurricanes and the Florida Panthers, because apparently the warmer the weather, the better the team. The Panthers looking to be the sixth straight team to touch the Prince of Wales trophy from Florida. Three in a row from Tampa, next two from the Panthers of Sunshine. Note, by the way, the Panthers did not actually touch the trophy last year. That's bad luck sometimes. Panthers are up 2-0 in this series after winning game one 5-2, and then just winning game two 5-0. The Panthers are inevitable, seemingly. So, Ant, after the Panthers beat the Maple Leafs in 7 games, and who doesn't beat the Toronto Maple Leafs in 7 games? They have the longest losing streak in 7 games, tied with the Avalanche in currently in the postseason for hockey. Who are you watching for from the reigning champs going into game 3?
Well, how do you make the defending champs better? You trade for a guy who has a lot of championship experience. And that guy is Brad Marchand, who, by the way, is a Toronto Maple Leafs owner and sworn enemy of Paul Bissonnette, but that's another story for another day. But yes, Brad Marchand is the guy I'm looking at for the Florida Panthers. Now keep this in mind, through the first 12 games on that third line, when Anton Lundell and E2 Louis Sarin, I butchered his name, through the first 12 games of the postseason, the trio combined for 10 goals and 34 points, 55 shots on goal, and a ridiculous plus minus 31 on the ice together. Plus 14 in scoring chances, plus 8 in high danger scoring chances, and have 8 high danger goals while allowing 0 on that third line. So that's how much he has brought to the Panthers as far as just lining him up. It has to be mentioned about his Game 7 dominance of the Toronto Maple Leafs. He's a perfect 5-0 as far as beating. He is leaving the ghost of Stanley Cup past whenever he's on the radar of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I'm quite sure when he was traded from Boston to Florida, the Maple Leafs kind of celebrated they had to see him again, till they had to actually see him again. Perfect 5-0. A goal and a couple assists in that Game 7. By the way, he is now second all-time in career playoff scoring against the Maple Leafs, with 37 points. Second only behind Gordie Howe with 53. Also passed Alistair Ovechkin for the most career goals. Career points. In Game 7 with 10. And through the first 2 games in the series, they really have not needed Brad Marchand to do a whole lot. Game 1, he got into a fight, got thrown out of the game. And Game 2, it was his team, the rest of the team that kind of did the heavy lifting. He had 2 shots on goal, but not much else. This Florida Panthers team is loaded. And obviously, having Marchand is a bonus. They haven't really need him to be the playmaker that he is noted to be. His veteran experience helps a lot. And it also helps that the teammates that once hated his guts when he was on the Boston Bruins now actually likes him in the locker room. So that helps quite a bit. But if Marchand gets going with this team already just seemingly doing whatever they want with the Hurricanes to the first 2 games, it's going to be tough sledding the rest of the way for Carolina. I mean, just watching Game 2 tonight, I mean, the Panthers score almost a minute and a half into the game and just never look back. This team is just firing on all cylinders. They fell behind 2 games to Toronto and won the next 3 or 4 to the next 4 out of 5 to win that series. Boy, you know what? Carolina, good luck, because the way this team is playing, it wouldn't shock me if they're holding up World Stanley's challenge in the next couple of weeks.
So, with the Hurricanes, Um,
My partner's at a loss for words, ladies and gentlemen. Note the date and time.
2006. 2006. Me and Anthony were graduating college. Life was good. And the Carolina Hurricanes won their last conference finals game. We are now 14 consecutive conference finals losses for the Carolina Hurricanes, 6 straight to the Florida Panthers for the last 2 years. Jay,
Yeah.
the Carolina Hurricanes just cannot catch a break. They did knock out the all-time goal scorer in Alex Ovechkin, first team to knock out the all-time leading goal scorer since 1997. But after the conference leading Capitals, the Panthers have just been a nightmare. But what are you watching for as Carolina now has to go on the road for games 3 and 4?
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is I talked on the last show about how the Hurricane system doesn't really produce stars as we tend to think of them. No one player puts up Connor McDavid type numbers in Rod Brindamore's offense, despite the epic amount of shots that the Canes usually put on goal as a team, especially in 5-on-5. That said, there's always someone who stands out for the Canes in the playoffs, even if that someone changes from series to series. In the previous series against the Caps, I talked about Sebastian Aho, and he was his usual solid self, +3 for the series, 2 assists, 8 shots on goal. But for this series against a much tougher foe, my focus is going to be on his line mate, Andrei Svechnikov, who after a regular season where he had 20 goals, 10 at even strength, 10 on the power play, 28 assists for 48 points total, came into the Eastern Conference third in postseason scoring for Carolina behind his line mates, Aho and Seth Jarvis, both of whom had put up 10 points through the first 2 rounds. The part of the reason why I went with Svechnikov was that when these teams met in the 2023 Eastern Conference Finals, where the Hurricanes only managed 6 goals en route to being swept by the Panthers, he was unavailable due to a torn ACL. Through the first 2 rounds of the playoffs this year, he was a big difference maker for the Caps, as only Mikko Rantanen of Dallas, with 9, had more goals than the 8 that Svechnikov had scored at that point, and the 7 at even strength that he had scored for the Canes led the NHL coming into the Eastern Conference Finals. His series-clinching goal with 1:59 remaining in the third period of Game 5 against Washington is the second latest series-clinching goal in regulation in Carolina history, behind Eric Stahl's game winner with 32 seconds left in the third period of Game 7 of the 2009 first-round series against the New Jersey Devils. That was Svechnikov's third game-winning goal of the playoffs, which also led the NHL through the first 2 rounds. Now, the next-gen type metrics for Svechnikov during the regular season wouldn't lead you to believe that this type of playoff performance was on the horizon. He only put up 2.3 points per 60 minutes. Decent, but not McDavid/Draisaitl level of like 4+ points per 60 minutes among players with at least 100 minutes of time on ice during the regular season. For context, Jarvis led the Canes with 2.85 points per 60. Aho was next at 2.8 even per 60. So Svechnikov's points per 60 through rounds 1 and 2 in these playoffs of 2.98 coming into the Eastern Conference Finals is a big deal, especially as both of his line mates were also up from their regular season points per 60 mark. Jarvis boosted himself to 3.21. Aho 2.88 so far, coming into the Eastern Conference Finals. Svechnikov has also had a big jump in his goals per 60. In the regular season, he was at 0.97, and he was at 2 points, but he jumped all the way up to 2.65 for the postseason coming into the Eastern Conference Finals, which is tops among all skaters through rounds 1 and 2. Now, as much as the Canes are the epitome of team, having Svechnikov matching his line mates' production on the number 1 line heading into the Eastern Conference Finals is huge. They're pacing at a combined +42 with net rating as the Canes look to not repeat the outcome of the 2023 matchup with Florida. He struggled in the Game 1 loss with only 1 assist and only 1 shot on goal. Though the Canes' number 1 line overall was productive, 1 goal, 3 assists, and 11 shots on goal. If he can get back to that level of production, especially in terms of putting the puck in the net that we saw in the previous 2 series, it'll go a long way to getting Carolina to the Stanley Cup Finals. Now, obviously, I wrote that line prior to tonight's game. Unfortunately, things only got worse for Svechnikov in Game 2. His giveaway in his own end directly led to Florida's first goal by Gustav Forsling, 1 minute and 17 seconds into the first period. His second giveaway in his own end resulted in Florida's second goal. Matthew Tkachuk redirected Carter Verhaeghe's shot past Freddie Anderson, 11:41 into the first period. He took a 2-minute roughing minor, 14:07 into the first period, which led to a power play goal by Sam Bennett, 15:50 into the period. He was -2 after the first period with no shots on goal. And in between periods, the Canes made a switch. Brindamore took him off the number one line, though he did keep him on the number one power play unit. Svechnikov's third giveaway of the game, with 7:03 left in the third period, ultimately resulted in a delayed penalty, which Alexander Barkov then converted into a power play goal. Svechnikov finished with no shots on goal and -3 for the game in the 5-0 loss that put the Canes down 0-2. Look, this was an utterly bad night for the entire Carolina Hurricanes team. But for a squad that often struggles to score goals in this round of the playoffs specifically, they need the version of Andrei Svechnikov who scored 5 goals in round 1, or the Canes will once again fall to the Panthers in the Eastern Conference Finals. And it will not be a long series.
Again, gentleman's sweep being a very, very high standard right now.
Yeah.
Remember earlier in the show when we talked about Anthony having to rewrite his positive Knicks angle, and it never really became a positive Knicks angle, it became a negative Knicks angle? Well, it's time to talk about Frederik Andersen's really good first 2 rounds. And now it's time to talk about the series against Carolina. The 35-year-old veteran, let's start with the good. The 35-year-old veteran, Frederik Andersen of Carolina, had the best save percentage and goals against average in the postseason going into the conference finals among goalies at multiple starts. He held opponents to 1 or 0 goals in 6 of his 9 starts. Only gave up 6 goals in 5 first-round games against the Washington Capitals, who was the league's second best team, as we all know. He's been defenseman on the team said he's been the backbone of our team for sure. All playoffs, we've relied on him heavily, and they did that. The 7-2 record, 1.36 goals against average and a 937 save percentage. No other starting goaltender had a sub-2 goals against average heading into the conference finals. Perfect backstop for a defense that smothered its first 2 foes. Now, had a short amount of games this season, only 22, because of knee surgery. And he had to leave game 4 of the first round series against the New Jersey Devils because of an injury. Came back, only missed 1 game. Started the second round against the Capitals, and again, only 6 goals. So, guys have been around for 12 seasons. Shooting back the other way was a factor in 19 of his 55 goals against in the regular season, 5 of 12 in the playoffs. He is a good player against the rush, but that could be his weakness. High and clean off the rush is a little bit different. 2 years ago, 64% of track goals coming off rush chances, but now it's only 40%. That was for the second straight season. That's a little above the 35% average. Includes 6 of 7 shot goals that went high in the regular season. And in game 2, Connor McMichael shot high over the glove from the hash marks on a game 2 breakaway. So Andersen has been pretty steady throughout the playoffs going into the Hurricane series. Again, we can tear up that because this series he's been anything but. Five goals given up against in game number 1, 15 of 20, a 750 save percentage and a 5.2 goals against average, letting up a lot of goals going, especially in that second period. Tonight, 12 saves on 16 shots. Again, a 750 goals save percentage, a 6 goal against average now for these last few rounds, these last 2 games. And he was pulled after 40 minutes, giving in the backup who played game 5, Peter Kochetkov. So going forward, we'll see if they want to make a change in goalie just to kind of give themselves a shakeup. Or will Carolina just kind of have to depend on Frederik Andersen and depend on the horses that got there? We'll see. Florida is a team that whoever the goalie is, they're going to make waves. On the other side, we've talked about good Bob, bad Bob, good Bob, bad Bob, Sergei Bobrovsky for a long time. He is older than Andersen. He's 36, 15th NHL season. First Stanley Cup last year, 2 Vezina trophies. At Bad Bob's worst, 13 goals against 13 goals given up in the first 3 games against the Toronto Maple Leafs. At Bob's worst, he's bad. 4 goals though with the final 4 games against the against the Maple Leafs in the second round. When good Bob is good, he's very good, and we saw that again in those 4 games. Now for him, you want to create chaos around him. Getting pucks and bodies to the net is a recipe of success against Bobrovsky. 14% tracked average of the regular season on shots that hit a body or a stick. 21% that's the average. 21% of the regular season. 6 of the 28 goals so far in the postseason have involved that. He is a lateral goalie, and he 17 one-liner goals given up this season. Bobrovsky has given up 6 goals in the playoffs on plays across the middle, but the Lightning tried that in game number 5 of the first round series, and he robbed the Lightning twice. Now, we've said so much about Bobrovsky these last few years, and you always need the backstop to at least be the backbone of the team. The stand on the head thing is kind of out of date now, just because of the fact that we've seen good goalies like Connor Hellebuyck, as we've talked about, kind of struggle in this round, and it's really the guys with experience that you want behind the net. That's why Marc-Andre Fleury had a job for so long, up to this year when he was backstopping for Minnesota. And Bobrovsky is a guy who you want to go to war with him now. After he won that Stanley Cup last year and got to the Stanley Cup in 2023, I think a weight was lifted off his shoulders. And even though Bad Bob will creep out of the hole like Punxsutawney Phil every now and then, seeing his shadow going back into the hall.
Nice, Rabbi.
The Florida Panthers have about 6 good weeks left because good Bob is here and the shadow has not been seen.
Not yet, anyway.
Not yet, but we'll see. It can still get ugly for the Hurricanes because, again, when you lose 14 straight playoff games in this round, then in a streak that has gone almost 2 decades, you just want one. You just want one.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now in the West, where we have a 2024 rematch of the conference finals between the Edmonton Oilers and Dallas Stars, as the Oilers, hey, a team up north, look to upend the Stars to get their hands on the Clarence S. Campbell Ball. Oilers also did not touch that trophy last year. Didn't help them. The Oilers also, they could be the first team since the 2008-2009 Red Wings to win consecutive conference titles in the West. The Blackhawks and Kings kind of did that for 5 years on and off, though, in 2011 through 2015. No one has done it in almost 16 years. Bad start for the Oilers, though, as a 5-goal third period gave the Dallas Stars the win and they have a 1-0 advantage in this series. They still have home ice. Anthony, the Stars needed 6 to get rid of the President's Trophy winners. Dun, dun, dun. In the Winnipeg Jets in round 2. Now, who do they need to de-slick the Oilers?
The player I'm looking at is Mikko Rantanen. And if you told Mikko Rantanen last summer that he'd be playing for not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 teams the next calendar year, if you include the 4 Nations face-off, he'd probably laugh at you. But that's exactly the kind of year that Mikko Rantanen has gone through. Started with Colorado, then just traded to Carolina, ironically enough, and now a member of the Dallas Stars, and of course, sandwiched in between that, playing for Team Finley in the 4 Nations face-off. So he's been pretty busy as far as travel mileage and frequent flyer mileage as far as bouncing to and from an airport. But with all that aside, he leads the entire Stanley Cup playoffs in points with 19 in his first 13 games coming into the conference final series. Obviously, he's a candidate for the Conn Smythe Trophy if Dallas is able to win it all. He's actually held off the score sheet the last 2 games in the second round against Winnipeg. Did have assist on a power play and 3 shots on goal in the Stars 6-3 comeback win over Edmonton in Game 1. what makes him so dangerous is that he does have the ability to show up in the big moments. And we saw in Game 7, had Smith, a director in Hollywood, wrote the script against his former team. He notched a hat trick in that Game 7, 4-2 win against Colorado. So he's the guy that I'm going to be keeping an eye on. Let's see if he does get on the score sheet and eventually, obviously gets it going again. They're going to need him. Obviously, when you think about the firepower that the Edmonton Oilers bring to the table, and if Rico Rantanen can get it going, that's a big boost for Dallas moving forward in this series.
All right, Jay, only a goal with 4/10 of a second left was between the Oilers and a regular sweep of the Golden Knights. But after that conference semis gentleman's sweep against Vegas, which gentlemen on the Oilers are you depending on here?
Nice turn of phrase, Rabbi. I mean, look, I know I'm a broken record at this point in the postseason talking about stars playing like stars, but this instance, I'm not wrong. I talked about it plenty last year at this time as I had the Edmonton scout as well, and it continues to hold true this year. Edmonton will go as far as Connor McDavid takes them. Guy's coming off a regular season where he had 26 goals, 17 at even strength, 5 on the power play, 74 assists for an even 100 points through rounds 1 and 2 of the postseason. 3 goals, all at even strength, 14 assists to lead the NHL, 17 points total. Now, McDavid, who has led the Oilers to the Western Conference Finals in 3 of the last 4 seasons, has 17 career points, 6 goals, 11 assists in this round, which ranks 7th in Oilers history behind a host of legends whose names I'm sure you guys can all guess. I don't even need to say their first names. Gretzky, Messier, Anderson, Curry, Coffey, Simpson. His 6 goals are tied with Zach Hyman and Dave Hunter for 6th in franchise history behind Curry, Messier, Anderson, Gretzky, and Simpson. McDavid's career playoff points per game rate of 1.58 is 3rd in NHL history, behind Gretzky at 1.84 and Mario Lemieux at 1.61. Part of the reason the focus is on McDavid is that during the regular season, outside of his 100 points and Leon Draisaitl's 106, no other Oiler forward topped 50. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins was next with 49, that 3rd highest among Oiler forwards. Number 1 defenseman, Evan Bouchard, was the only Oiler, period, other than those 2 guys, who had more than 50 points with 67 on 14 goals and 53 assists. That lack of depth behind McDavid and Draisaitl was a concern coming into the playoffs. That has followed through so far in Edmonton's run to the Western Conference Finals. McDavid's 17 points, Draisaitl 16, and Bouchard's 12 lead the way. Those 6 other players have scored at least 3 goals and 6 have at least 6 points so far in this postseason. Though those numbers have resulted in Edmonton having 11 above average forwards in terms of net rating, so which means the depth behind McDavid has improved a bit. The big issue for Edmonton, and this also starts with McDavid, has been their inability to score with the man advantage as compared to last season. Last season, number 2 among all teams that played more than one series, 29.3 success rate on the power play. And they had the top 4 skaters in terms of power play points, led by McDavid's 17, 2 goals, 15 assists. But Edmonton comes into the Western Conference Finals in a power play slump. They're coming off a 1 for 11. That's 9.1% success rate in their previous series against Vegas after going 5 for 13, 38.4 in their opening round series against the Kings. Overall, this postseason, Edmonton has yet to score a power play goal in any of their 6 road games. Even more concerning is that through 11 games in this postseason, McDavid doesn't have a power play goal and only 1 power play point. Now, McDavid has recognized this issue, saying, quote, "As good as Dallas is, we're a really good team too. We've beaten 2 good teams in LA and Vegas. Our 5-on-5 game has been really good. Our special teams will need to get going. It starts with the power play. The power play has to find a way to be a factor in the series, and we will. Obviously, they're a really deep team. It's the conference final, so everybody's going to be a good team. They have scoring all over. I think they have 8 goal scorers or something like that. They actually have 6, meaning the Stars. They're incredibly deep, have good defensemen, great goalie. They have a really good team. It'll be a good test. Now, Edmonton comes into the Western Conference Finals leading the remaining playoff teams in goals per game at 3.91, and McDavid leads all skaters in postseason assists with 14 and even strength points at 16. 3 goals, 13 assists. McDavid's net rating jumped 10.6 goals in the postseason over the last 3 years. We haven't seen that same jump in this year's playoffs, not yet anyway. But if the Oilers to get past this iteration of the Dallas Stars, he may very well need to make that jump. That's the expectation when your nickname is McJesus. So, after all that, how did Game 1 play out for McDavid? Well, the Oilers' power play finally scored a goal on the road, but their penalty kill allowed 3 in a 5:26 span in the third period, turning a 3-1 lead into what was ultimately a 6-3 loss. Now, you can't lay the meltdown entirely at McDavid's speed. He only spent 32 seconds on the penalty kill. But a stat line of no goals, 2 assists, just 4 shots on goal, and -1 overall for the game in a team high 22 minutes and 44 seconds on ice, while not bad, may not be enough to get it done over the course of this series.
Yeah, we'll see. This is a very interesting rematch. And this Dallas team, you don't know, but they made the conference finals 4 out of 5 years. And an NHL that is supposed to be all parity. It's a little bit different to see a lot of stability at the top. Okay. Yeah. So what the hell do I do for Edmonton's goalie situation? Do I just say Stuart Pickard, Calvin Skinner? We'll focus mostly on Skinner because he's currently the guy at goal. Stuart Skinner.
Pickard is still rehabbing an injury, if I remember correctly. Did I read that right, Rabbi?
No, Pickard is available to come in. He is on the active roster. He didn't play games 1 and 2, but the expectation is he can come back in game 3 if necessary. But in game 3 of the second round of the by the way, here's how the playoffs have gone in terms of goalie, in terms of who's been in goal. While we can actually say this, game 1 and 2. Stuart Skinner was in, kind of let up a bunch of goals in that, moved back over to Pickard. Pickard started the next 6 games. Then the injury happened. Went back to Skinner. Skinner posted back-to-back shutouts in game 4 and 5 after losing in game number 3. And we're on Stuart Skinner right now, which is why I'm going to talk about him. Skinner replaced Pickard in game 3 of the second round. Had those back-to-back shutouts. Eliminated the Vegas Golden Knights. They looked more controlled in his movements and contained his positioning than at the Stanley Cup playoffs when he lost those first 2 games against the Los Angeles Kings on the road, giving up 12 goals in total. 11 goals in total, 6 in game 1, 5 in game 2. Rush-style chances accounted for 46% of the regular season goals against Skinner, well above a 35% average. That has pretty much been that way since 2017. 17 of the 26 goals scored on plays and passes across the middle of the ice forced Skinner to move side to side. 3 of those goals have happened in the playoffs so far. Majority of these are one-timers that can help Skinner go against the ice. In those back-to-back shutouts, the Golden Knights in round 2 only had 3 lateral rushing attacks. Of the 26 goals on side-to-side plays across the middle of the ice this season, 19 came on plays and passes that forced Skinner to move right to left towards the glove. It doesn't really show the track of every shot, but it's a discrepancy that big, so you'll know which way the shots are going. Opponents also scored 21 goals on plays that hit sticks against Skinner this season. That's well above a 14% average, and 3 of the 15 goals that he's led up in these playoffs going into the conference finals have happened on the same way. 14 regular season rebound goals, 12 on second chances below the hash marks. Woo. And those plays have accounted for, he's had goals go through the 5-hole, by the way. 5 of 12 goals scored, those same plays have led that going through the 5-hole this season. Now, enough about positioning. Let's talk quickly about the postseason numbers. It's not bad. It's at 3.39 goals against average, which included the 5 goals allowed in game number one against the Dallas Stars in game one in that 6-3 loss. 22 saves on 27 shot attempts. Obviously, it was that barrage in game one in the third period that was the difference. If you talk about Pickard, by the way, only had 85 goals really to look against this year. Made 6 straight starts before that injury happened in game 3. That's why the substitution happened in goal. His postseason has been pretty damn good, by the way. 19 goals against average, 284 GAA, 888 save percentage. So we might see a little bit of Pickard if he ends up getting more healthy, because it's always been a problem for the Oilers to really get over the hump. They've had the offensive statistics. Now it's really the goalie that needs to step up a little bit more. On the other side, we talked about how the Stars have been at this point for the last 3 years. The reason for that is Jake Oettinger. No stranger to playoff pressure. Starter the last 4 seasons, 3rd straight trip to the Western Conference Final. He is the ripe old age of 26. 929 save percentage in 6 games against the Winnipeg Jets in the second round. It was a 911 save percentage in 7 games against the Avalanche. What to look out for? Goals scored on shots or passes that bounced off a body or stick in front of the net accounted for 23% of the regular season goals against Oettinger, 6 of 20 in round 1, 5 of 11 in round number 2. It's only a 14% contract average. That's not good. Screenshots, 9 of 23 broken goals he gave up in the regular season, 3 of 11 in the playoffs, originating on sharp angle attacks. Let's talk about East-West and quick shots. Shots after passes and plays across the middle of the ice increase the chances of scoring on any goalie, as you may know, or you don't know. I'm just telling you now. They accounted for 22 track goals on Oettinger during the regular season and 5 of 20 in the first round. It's better than the 22.1% average, but it's still a problem. Oettinger has been a guy who has net play coverage, a variety of post-integration techniques, Nathan, and he is better positioned for plays in the middle. You can have a little short space over the shoulder and pad an open shot, and in Game 7 of the first round, Nathan MacKinnon did that. Rebounds. Oettinger has only given up 2 rebound goals during the playoffs. It was 13 in the regular season sample, 10 of 18 in the 18 games after the Four Nations face-off All-Star break. Simply put, Oettinger is the better goalie in this series. We all know that. And if you don't know that, I just told you. 251 save percentage and 251 goals against average, a 917 save percentage. And he has been very solid this whole season. And a 259 goals against average is not one of the 3 finalists for the Vezina Trophy. However, he eliminated one of them in round number 1. I think he also eliminated Darcy Kempler of the Colorado Avalanche. So he just gets rid of the goalies who are up. Actually, it's not Darcy Kempler. It's but he got rid of Hellebuck, which is the big thing. All I can say is, you need to have, with all of the offensive talent that the Stars have, you need to have the goalie in the back of the net. And the Dallas Stars have that. They are built for the playoffs. And one of the reasons why they are here is because of Jake Oettinger.
Yeah, I mean, Rabbi, the thing about the key thing about the Stars, and like we all know how good Oettinger is. I mean, we've talked about him in the postseason the last few years. The key for them was A, being healthy, and B, having guys who could actually put the puck in the net so he didn't have to constantly stand on his head. And the guy that Anthony talked about, he could be the difference in the Stars getting back to the Stanley Cup Finals.
And maybe Mikko Rantanen will be happy in Dallas that he could just stay there instead of going to a different team in the course of a year. Finally, baseball and closers are synonymous. So tonight for the closer, let's talk baseball, and Jesus Christ, let's talk Pete Rose. Banned in 1989 due to his gambling on baseball, which made him ineligible for the Hall of Fame thanks to Commissioner Fave Vincent. He got his eligibility reinstated last Tuesday to Cooperstown. Not a specialty for him, but a new rule from Rob Manfred saying that when a player dies when a player dies, his ineligibility for the Hall is lifted. Rose passed last September at the age of 83. Guys, obviously, Rose is the highlight from this new ruling. But as I start with Anthony, because Jay's going to rant, you wait.
Well, I'm going to educate.
We'll educate, but there might be some ranting in there, hopefully, too.
Maybe.
How do these new rules, Anthony, going forward, change the Hall of Fame itself, if not just for what Pete Rose may or may not happen to him when it comes to the Hall?
Well, to me, I mean, this to me, it's kind of a complicated thing because if you're talking about Pete Rose, the baseball player, I mean, yes, he should be in the Hall of Fame without question. We look at his career stats and everything he brought to the game, but the reason why he was, he had that banishment was because Pete Rose, the person, is what kind of offset Pete Rose the player. Now think about everything. And by the way, Shooter Joe Jackson is in that inclusion as well, and we know about his involvement in the Black Sox scandal, 1919 World Series. The new rule is kind of a bit of a head scratch to me because if we're talking about integrity of the game, and obviously these two gentlemen has passed on, then what's the change? I mean, because we look at you got players who are alive who contribute to the game as well, such as a Bond, such as a Mark McGuire, and they have Roger Clemens, and part of the reason why they're not in the Hall of Fame is because of the integrity of the game. And I'm just looking at this like, hey, wait a minute, you're suddenly changing the rules, and I have to say this: we don't know how much of President Trump's influence may have played into this decision. I mean, the current president has been very publicly open about Pete Rose being reinstated, being in the Hall of Fame. Back in February, he hosted about Manfred at the White House. So you can kind of make a conclusion to of that, which you will. But it's going to be interesting because it still comes down to the voters and whether or not he gets in at all or even get put back on the ballot. I think his earliest eligibility year is 2027. So I mean, even if he's basically reinstated, doesn't mean he still gets into the Hall of Fame. I mean, we've seen that kind of current players. If you if you brought the integrity of baseball into question as far as behavior or whatnot, there's a good chance you may not get in. I mean, it's not just and when people, it's not just the gambling. There was sexual assault allegation that came out several years ago. He obviously spent time in jail for tax evasion. So Pete Rose by himself is just a complicated situation, but it's also the years of lying about gambling on the sport of baseball. I think that has rubbed people the wrong way until he had to sell a book, and eventually that's when he decided to tell the truth for himself. And I think at this point, people are kind of tired and moved on from the whole debate of Pete Rose getting into Hall of Fame or not, because the man has passed on. I think the world of baseball and pretty much everyone else, for that matter, has kind of started to move forward on the situation, and it's just going to be interesting to see if reinstated even just put on a ballot and eventually gets in.
Jay, again, let's get a little bit of an education here. This is not just a Pete Rose rule, and this does not mean Pete Rose is going to be in the Hall of Fame ASAP.
No, look, so this move by Manfred to remove all players from baseball's ineligible list once they've passed away is no small thing. It removes the biggest roadblock keeping players from potentially getting into the Hall of Fame. This, of course, has folk who have long clamored for Pete Rose to be given a plaque in Cooperstown, thinking that his enshrinement is now a foregone conclusion. Well, allow me to channel my inner Lee Corso. Not so fast, my friends. Rose would need to be voted in by the classic baseball era committee, who will not even convene to debate the topic until December of 2027. Rose isn't eligible for consideration any sooner because he played most of his career before 1980, and there's at least three things that have to happen between now and then. First, Rose has to get past a screening committee called the Historical Overview Committee, which is appointed by the Baseball Writers Association of America. That committee will decide if Rose will even appear on the next ballot for the Classic Baseball Era Committee. If he gets through, that still doesn't mean he's a shoo-in, because we'll have no idea who will be on the committee on that day in December 2027, as there are two era committee ballots before the one Rose would theoretically be on, and thus the Hall of Fame is 2 years from even starting the process of contemplating who would comprise that particular committee. So there is zero way to know if that committee will have pro-Rose voters or anti-Rose voters. The only thing we do know about the committee is that there will be 16 members, and the breakdown will be some combination of Hall of Fame players, likely 6, who potentially played in the same era as Rose, though that's not a certainty, plus 10 others who are a combination of longtime baseball executives and a few baseball writers and or historians. The breakdown of those 10 can vary, though 7 and 3 executives to writers and or historians has been the most common. Oh, and in recent years, the Hall has made a concentrated effort to avoid stocking the committee with former teammates of players likely to be on the ballot. So if that trend continues, chances aren't great that the likes of Johnny Bench, Tony Perez, Mike Schmidt, longtime teammates of Rose's in Cincinnati and Philadelphia, will be on the committee. Second, there's only 3 slots on each ballot, and Rose would need 12 of the 16 members, 75% of the votes, just like on the regular Hall of Fame ballots, to put his name on their ballot. Oh, here's something about this part of the process I found very interesting. The members of the committee cannot confer with each other before voting and cannot reveal which players they voted for once the ballots are collected. They don't find out which of the players they're considering for enshrinement actually made it until a few minutes before the Hall makes it public. Oh, and about that 75% threshold, the Hall made a change in April of 2022, reducing the number of names on the ballot from 10 to 8 and reduced the number of candidates committee members can vote for from 4 down to 3. That means the maximum number of total votes has dropped from 64 to 48, which reduces the chances for more than one player to get elected, let alone 3 or 4. Which leads to that third thing. Who else might be on that same ballot that Rose might be on? Here's some names from that same pre-1980 era that could potentially be on that ballot. Red Sox legendary pitcher Luis Tiant, Dodger great first baseman Steve Garvey, the previous AL record holder for home runs in a season, Roger Maris, plus one other big name that also came off the ineligible list with Rose, Shoeless Joe Jackson of the infamous 1919 Black Sox. Rose will not be alone on the ballot, and he's not a lead pipe lock. Oh, one other thing to keep in mind when it comes to players like Rose who have big career resumes but also have big controversy attached to them. In December of 2022, Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens appeared on the ballot for the Contemporary Era Committee after not getting 75%, meeting the 75% vote threshold during their previous 10 years on the writer's ballot. Neither made the cut in their first term with the committee, and in fact got so little support from the committee that the amount of votes they each got weren't even released to the public. Per their orders, the committee didn't say why they voted the way they did, but you don't need to be Sherlock Holmes to figure that one out. Rose may now be eligible for the Baseball Hall of Fame, but don't go making plans for a summer of 2028 trip to Cooperstown just yet.
I'm curious, and this is like an either-or situation. Which one of these people has the best mark on their life in terms of morals? Pete Rose, Shoeless Joe Jackson, or Steve Garvey. Please, for the love of God, let's not make that the three who are going on the
Rabbi, all I will say to that is this. There was never any proof that Jackson took money, and the guy hit 375 in the World Series. So there's a lot of people who have a hard time reconciling that with, him being, one of the guys who took money and actually threw the series. The biggest knock I think that people tend to make on Jackson is that if any of that is true, they believe that he knew about it and just didn't say anything. So by keeping his mouth shut, he's an accessory before, during, and after the fact.
It's kind of a Joe Paterno situation when you think about it in terms of being an accessory, not necessarily the same actual crime. But
right. Didn't aid in abet, but you didn't stop it either.
No, and when it comes to throwing a baseball World Series, that's a big thing. Okay, just a few more things before we kind of wrap up the show. One thing that I found interesting is last December, to kind of get this process kicking off, because Rose was actually the first person banned after the fucking tenure of Kennesaw Mountain Landis, the first MLB commissioner.
Yep.
But Rose's daughter, Fawn Rose, and the family attorney, Jeffrey M. Lenkoff, met with Rob Manfred. And when Manfred wrote, he said, "In my view, once an individual has passed away, the purposes of Rule 21 have been served.
Yeah.
Obviously, a person no longer with us cannot represent a threat to the integrity of the game. Moreover, is it hard to conceive of a penalty that has a more deterrent effect than one that lasts a lifetime with no reprieve?" We can talk all we want. And I think one thing that kind of just gets left on the doorstep is the fact that the entire 1919 Black Sox, including Shoeless Joe Jackson, is up for this Hall of Fame.
Not every one of them has a Hall of Fame worthy resume.
No, not all of them do, but they're all up.
Yeah.
They are all up. And Shoeless Joe obviously is going to be the biggest name of all of them. But one thing I'm just very curious to see is what the Veterans Committee does when we get to that point. Because what Bonds and Clemens did is all technically circumstantial. There was a list, there was a Mitchell report, but there was never anything that was admitted to, and there's never anything that was, actually said out there. By the way, both are assholes, and that's another reason why they currently are in the Hall of Fame. Let's be completely honest. When you're an asshole and you have these things, I think it's easy for writers to say, nah, we're good. But one thing I'm very interested to see is what the Veterans Committee will do, because the Veterans Committee and the media are two totally different mediums. And when we get to later in life, when obviously we'll probably get the likes of Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, and probably noted steroid emitter Alex Rodriguez into that Veterans Committee. It'll be very interesting to see what they do. Pete Rose is going to be really the first case of, does your merits overwhelm your
character or lack thereof.
And character or lack thereof. Because what a player thinks as a Hall of Famer is much, much different than what someone who's watched the game for many years, but what technically some Joe Schmo thinks who's never actually played the game to see. It's a kind of a dichotomy that I'm very interested to see going forward. And again, that's the only thing that's interesting about this. I want to put this to bed. Get the hell out of here. For Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait, I am Stephen Rabinowitz, and no, I am not that guy who hassled Brian Windhorst after Game 6 of the Eastern Conference semifinals. No, not me. I have receipts. It's not me. Much too deep of a voice. YouTube.com/OnTheSportsLines is where you can see us on demand if you're watching us live on Facebook.com/OnTheSportsLines. Thanks, and keep up with that. Subscribe to both. And Jay, Twitter.
Our Twitter handle is @ONTH Sportslines, where you'll find a link to each new show, like tonight's, along with tidbits and nuggets from the world of sports that we think are worth your time to check out. This week, I've posted a link to a story by my pal Jason Stark of The Athletic, breaking down the process that Pete Rose Hall of Fame candidacy has to go through, a lot of which I used in our last segment. So thank you, Jason. The article gets much more in depth than I did on which committee will be involved, who are the members, what it will take to get him on their ballot, how does their voting process work, when will it take place, and a lot more. It's a well put together piece that details that just because Rose may now be eligible for Cooperstown, it's by no means a foregone conclusion that he'll be getting in. Definitely worth your time to check out.
Back next time on the Sports Slides. Enjoy this summer weather outside, ladies and gentlemen.
Enjoy the long Memorial Day weekend, y'all.
Yeah.
Wear your long sleeve shirts. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.